Hi there and welcome to Scrap and Coffee. We are going to continue with the storage box for the Home Again mini album. So we need to go work on the outside to make the box a little bit more sturdy. So we are going to clean up all the edges using our 1-inch strips with double-sided tape and a score line down the middle. Here I am going from the smaller sides towards the larger sides of the box, as you can see in a little bit of time. But I will recommend you to do it from the longer sides towards the shorter sides, and you can see later on why. This will work perfectly, but I think you will get a more beautiful result if you do it in the other way that I will show on later on in the video as well. So I'm placing the strip in a way that I'm still able to see my score line when I place it on the chipboard, and I try to, I'm just eyeballing it to place it somewhat centered, so my edges on the longer side are almost equal. So when I've placed it, I'm going to pinch the corners, and then we are going to burnish it a little bit and then cut on those corners so we can make that little piece fold inwards again. So slightly cut it at an angle. You want to have the smallest part of your angle around 1/8 of an inch. And my scissors are getting pretty sticky at this point from cutting all those strips with double-sided tape on it, so it was kind of becoming a struggle to cut it all. So here, and again, I'm just starting with getting those smaller pieces in. And then when I've done that, I will fold the other sides over, and it doesn't really matter in what order you do it. This is the bottom of the box, so it wasn't bothering me how it was gonna look at this point. So I'm just folding it all over and give that a burnish. And then I'm going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. So once you've done that, you can see there is still a little gap in the middle, and we have to fill that up with a strip as well. And that's pretty difficult. I didn't want it to overlap. Now on the bottom of the box, it wouldn't even matter as much if they would overlap because of the bulk. But I just wanted to bump them up against each other, and it's really difficult to get that nice and neat where you're not able to see any chipboard anymore. So that's why I will recommend you to do it in the other way that I will show you in a minute. So you have those gaps on the sides of your box and not on the front and the back of your box. So I'm just trying to cut the strip to size as good as I can and place that in between that gap of those two previous placed strips. Again, lining up the score line with the edge of the chipboard so you can fold the score line over. So I tried to get it as even as I could, but it was pretty difficult to get it how I want it. Give that a burnish. And as you can see on the bottom, it didn't line up. But that's the bottom, so that didn't mind to me, but you could also see it on the front of the box a little bit. And that's what you don't want actually. So on the top I did it a little bit different. Instead of going from the side, I started at the longer side. And then you will have those gaps on your side of the box, and I think that's better because that's the side where you don't look at as much instead of, you will look a lot at the front. So I think this is a better way of doing it. So actually I'm just doing the exact same thing as I did on the bottom. I'm just lining it up in a way that I can still see my score line when I place the strip. Give it a burnish and fold it over towards the sides. And if you are using 8.5 by 11 papers, then you probably won't be able to do it from this side. These were 12-inch strips, so take that in mind as well. then you have to do it from the shorter side. And you just repeat by giving it a burnish, cut an angle on your in the corners. And here I switched to my smaller scissors because my large scissors were so dirty they were really sticky. I really needed to clean them. So again, here I'm going to fold those little pieces, but here you want to get them in the corner as good as you can to reduce bulk. And I'm going to use that bone folder again with that really small edge so I can really push it in there. And I'm going to do that on both sides actually. Just pull on it slightly, and it doesn't really matter if you rip that little piece. And then I'm going to fold in the smaller sides first on both sides, and then you can fold over the longer edge. That's just something that I prefer to do, the smaller sides first. And then because I placed it where I could still see my score line, it will end up on the edge of the chipboard now, the score line. So it folded over pretty easy. And then I gave it all a burnish. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side and then fill in the gaps on the sides, just like I did on the bottom of the box. So especially here on the top, I didn't want to overlap these pieces because that would give a lot of bulk, and I was afraid that my lid was going to be too tight if I overlapped the pieces of cardstock too much. So that's why especially on the top and on the lid, I didn't want them to overlap. But I think I did a much better job here than on the bottom. So here you have that on the sides, but that I think it's less of a problem when it's on the sides. So now we have to do the 4 corners. So here I'm just going to measure some strips that are a little shorter than the height of the box and cut that to size. And these strips I'm going to taper. Again, all to reduce bulk in the corners of your box. So this strip you are going to place halfway, so you're going to try to line up your score line with the edge of the box, so you can fold it over and your score line is in the corner actually. So just try to get it as even as you can, but if it's not completely perfect, it's not a big deal. Give that a burnish and then fold it over, and yeah, you have to get some grip on it, so just see whatever works for you. So you're going to do this with all 4 sides. And then the large box is done. So we are going to do, here I was trying on the lid if it would still fit. And it did. I still had some wiggle room there. So now we are going to repeat the process that we just did on the large box. We are going to repeat it on the lid. And here again, I just went from the larger side towards the smaller side, so the gaps would be on the side of the lid and not in the front or in the back. So because the lid is a pretty small piece, I just find it easier to lay the strip on my work surface and just place the lid on top of it in a way that I could see the score line, so I could fold that over. It was easier than to place the strips with the lid standing up like it is now. So I'm just repeating the same process that I did on the large box. And like I said earlier, your scissors get really sticky from cutting all those strips. And what I do is I use my undo to clean my scissor. That works really good. So if you have undo and your scissors are sticky, then it's just really easy. Just put it on a paper towel and clean your scissors with it. It's really quick, fast and effective. So onto the bottom of the lid, or actually, yeah, well, this is the bottom of the lid. So again, I'm just placing it, putting the strip on my work surface and then place the lid on there, but it was a little bit difficult. What was the best way of holding onto the lid here? But eventually I got there. And again, I just tried to make the space, yeah, get it as centered as I could. So there is not much room left to fold over, but it's enough. And yeah, I just repeated everything that I did on the large box, so it didn't make sense to me to keep it all in the video. So the last step is to clean up the four corners. So for that I've got some little strips, or actually just used scraps that I had left over. Again, these pieces I am going to taper. And just place it on that corner. And again, this you will repeat on all four of your corners. So again, I kept on trying if my lid would still go on the box, and it did. So now this part is finished, the box is sturdy now, and I'm going to clean up the inside of the box. And I choose to use my green cardstock for it because yeah, I just thought it was a nice color, so I can use it. You can definitely use pattern paper for it as well. So I'm just measuring the box here, and I am going to make the piece of cardstock that goes in there 1/8 of an inch smaller than the measurement of the box. So that gives me a 1/16 border around my piece, and I'm going to start by placing the pieces in the lid. I just got everything at once. And for the larger pieces, I'm going to place some double-sided tape on the edges. So I'm sure that my corners and my edges are having a nice stick onto the box. And I'm going to combine it with some wet glue, so it gives me some wiggle room and some extra sturdiness. But you don't really have to. You can also use wet glue only. That's what I will do on the smaller strips for the lid of the box. And I really cut my finger badly the other day, so you can see the band-aid on my finger, and that really made it a little bit more difficult for me to craft, but I will be fine. So just combining some wet glue with it, and then you should have a nice fit on the inside. And here I was just trying to get it where I want it, but you don't have a lot of wiggle room because of the double-sided tape, of course, as well. So when you have it where you want it, you just give it a burnish, and then that's done. So for the strips, I was too lazy. I didn't want to place all the double-sided tape. I just used some wet glue, but I really made sure that I had it on the edges of the strip. So just measure your box and decide on the sizes of your strips, because it can be different than my box. So that's why I don't have any measurements for it. And then you just place them in there, and you repeat that for all 4 sides. So I'm only doing the inside because on the outside I'm going to use pattern paper, and you don't have to place extra basic cardstock underneath there. You can do it of course if you want, but I didn't feel necessary, so I just did the inside. And now I'm going on to the big box, but again I just had to fit if it was still going on there. So for the big pieces of the box, I did use my double-sided tape on all pieces. So I just did that for all pieces at once and gave them a burnish, so it's easier to remove your tape backing. And my daughter was really interested in this box, so she just had to come and take a look at what it was that I was doing. She wanted to help me, and of course play with the box, but Mommy didn't think that was a good idea. So I like to start with placing the piece for the bottom. I think it's easiest to start with it than to end with it. So again here I'm just going to combine the double-sided tape with that wet glue, so you have some wiggle room. So of course I fitted everything before I placed the tape on there, so I know it's going to fit. And then I'm just going to drop it in there, and hopefully it drops in a pretty good place. And then if you need to adjust it a little bit, you can. So I just burnish it with my hand a little bit, and then I get a longer bone folder to get in there and really burnish the edges of the paper. So you see, it is actually pretty easy to construct the box. It's a pretty basic box, but I did like the way it came out, so not everything has to be difficult. So for the side panels, I'm just placing the box on its side so I can just shove it in there and place it where I want it. I was really focused on the edge on the top of the box, so because that's the part that you're gonna see the best, even though it's the inside and you're not really gonna pay attention to it. But I just wanted to have it nice and even and lined up with that all the sides were nicely lined up on the top. So here my daughter is still trying to help me. So I asked her if she wants to say hello, and she's trying to wave, but she waves like the queen, so it was pretty funny. She doesn't understand that I was filming it. So this is the last piece, the piece for the back panel. So here you can really see I'm trying to shove the paper in there, lining it up where I want it, and then stick it down. Holding it in place on the top of the box, and then give it a good burnish with a longer bone folder. And then the inside is done. And I just like this nice clean look by using just a basic color cardstock. So the lid will still go on there. And now, yeah, you can place your pattern paper on the outside. So you can just measure that as well. I would like to go for a 1/16 border on the boxes with your pattern paper. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.